And a good day again. Welcome to another episode. This is episode number 4 of Catchin KARP Outdoors, honoring Minnesota's great outdoors. Thank you for coming along here today. On today's episode, we're going to wrap up our chat, and this will be our last weekly show, and then we'll jump into our twice-a-month podcast. But we wrap up our 3-part series with local fishing expert Matt Larson. As in previous shows, which you can go search on our website and at our YouTube page, you can hear us talking about prepping for fishing, some walleye stuff, local lakes. Today, we're going to wrap up with a chat about some other species of fish. We're going to talk northern pike, we're going to talk panfish, and we're going to talk more. So that's coming up right now on Catchin KARP Outdoors. Let's go over to northern pike, my sweet spot right there. That's the species I'm going to be targeting in the early season here. Same question. Give us some lakes, some bait, some lures. How should folks be targeting northerns?
Well, I would say that the first thing I would go to would be a bigger plastic on a bigger jig. So, I'll go to those first weed edges on the first drop off, same kind of locations as I'm looking for with the walleyes, but with these northerns now, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive. So your approach can be a little bit more aggressive. I'll use a little bit brighter color. I put all my color into the plastic. The jig doesn't necessarily make a difference as far as the color of the jig, but the plastic is where I'll usually go to with a color if I'm targeting northerns. With northerns too, you can use bucktails. You can burn some bucktails around. You can burn some shallow running rapalas like an X-Rap or something with a little bit of a teaser tail on it. And what I'll do is I'll go to that same first drop off that I'm targeting those walleyes, but then I'll use that more aggressive style bait that'll produce bites. You can even use bass spinners. A safety bladed spinner with a good big thick plastic on it will produce some really big northern pike bites. Where I would probably target northerns, I'm looking at Bell is a really, really good northern lake around here. Jenny is a good northern lake that I like. Cocato's got some really big northerns in it. And then Washington, Stella, Star has got some good opportunities. So Greenleaf is another one that I like to go to for northern pike fishing. So those are some immediate lakes that if you're just looking for northerns, those lakes that I listed would be definitely on my radar.
Let's go over to panfish, because that seems to be the kind of fish. If the walleye ain't biting, if the northern ain't biting, well, let's just go out and sit somewhere and catch some panfish, because more often than not, you're going to find something of that out there.
Yeah. So where we've been targeting the best panfish bite has been anywhere between 6 to 10 feet. And what we've been doing is we've been using Bobby Gardner plastics. And I got an array of plastics for different situations, but it seems like when it's overcast, we're using more UV-based colors, and then when it's bright and sunny out, we're going with more of a speckle body type bait. And all of my pan fishing right now has been coming off of plastics, and success with that too. For me, I've been looking for the areas where there's some bedding being made. A lot of the fish that I've been catching lately have been males that have been setting up beds, because if you look in the shallows, the water is warming so fast that these fish are setting up to spawn, and it might be an earlier spawn this year. So that being said, if I'm going for panfish over opening weekend, I'm looking a little bit shallower than I am for the walleyes and the northerns. I'm actually going beyond that first drop off in shallower, and I'm looking for mud. I'm looking for maybe a silt to gravel transition, and that's where they're going to be setting up to spawn. Pencil reeds too, they'll be burying themselves in the pencil reeds, especially if the sun's been out. But the one thing I will say is it's supposed to be cold, and so that can change a little bit too. that can turn those fish right off. And so a good way to go about getting those fish to trigger is keep working in shallower and shallower and shallower, because those fish are going to be trying to find the warmer and warmer and warmer water. So you might find yourself in 4 feet or less.
Sure.
Fishing, panfish.
And then very briefly here, we got just about 2 minutes left, and I know this season isn't open for a few weeks yet, but that is bass. So when that season does open up, what are you looking for there?
What I'm looking for there is I'm looking for the same kind of deal, getting off of that panfish, the staging, where they're staging, where they're setting up along those shallow edges, because they're going to be coming in looking to spawn too and setting up their beds. So I'm going to be looking for bass on that first drop off or shallower. And how I approach going after them is I use kind of a similar approach that I use with the walleyes. I'll use a bigger hook on an 1/8 ounce jig, and what I'll do is I will put a nice big fat plastic on there, whether it's a paddle shad or whether it's a moxie tail or even just a twister tail for that matter. And I will get actually fairly aggressive with that. I will pitch that in, and I will pitch a spot a couple different times, because those fish, just because you don't catch them on the first or the second or the third cast, they could still be there on that 4th and 5th cast. So keep that in mind, work your spots, because those bass, they're there. And you can attack bass with different kinds of shad wraps, plastics too. But that's where I'm going to go to and set myself up for success on when bass opener does come around.
Hey, and that wraps up our 3-part series with Matt Larson, local fishing expert. And hey, don't you worry, we're going to check in with Matt again a little bit later on this summer, because hey, as all of us guys or gals that go out on the water know, as the season gets warmer, as the summer changes, and spring sort of turns into summer turn into fall, tactics and all that change a little bit. So we're going to check back with Matt again a little bit later in the fishing season, and we'll keep in touch with him. But we have other guests that we will have for you as we'll settle into our twice a month podcast from here on out, starting in June. We thank you for tuning in here on the Catchin KARP Outdoors. Thank you to Matt Larson. You can see his contact information if you're looking for a guide or looking for some information or just have a question. You can see that right on the screen right now, and check that out. And we thank him for joining us here on Catchin KARP Outdoors. We'll be back again next time with another episode here on Catchin KARP Outdoors on our YouTube channel and our website. Don't forget to introduce a kid to the great outdoors, and always keep your line in the water. We'll see you next time.